an expert who's joining us on an expert on the student experience here at VCU. And that is our Associate Vice Provost for Student Affairs and the Dean of Students at VCU, Dr. Reuban Rodriguez. So I'm going to turn things over to you, Reuban, to say hello.
Great. Thank you so much, Lynanne, and also Hillary for putting together this chat series and having me be part of the first one of the spring semester. And I also want to thank all of our family members who are joining us. I know that you've got many other things to do in a busy workday. If you don't know already, because we just determined this within the past hour or so, actually, the university will be switching to online at 4 p.m. today. We started our snow showers as expected, and so we always want to make sure that students, faculty, staff are safe during inclement weather, which happens this time of the year. So again, welcome, and I look forward to meeting and chatting with all of you. I've got I've got a collection of VCU regalia, if you want to put it that way. I've been at the university since 2004 in my role, and so I've got one of my VCU alumni mugs, and hopefully all of your students will become VCU alums if they're not already, meaning some folks are multiple degree holders from the university. But again, thanks again. So my office is really two parts. I am the Dean of Students for the entire university. I've got staff, including Lynanne, who is our Associate Dean. We have another Associate Dean, Kendall Plagaman, and an Assistant Dean, Fred Tugas. Also Lisa Matthews Aylesworth, who is our Assistant Director, and our wonderful support staff who help work with all 29,000 students at the university, regardless of campus or regardless of program. We're here for them, and we really help them navigate any issues that may arise. It could be something related to academic work. It could be something related to non-academic work or anything that they are experiencing at the university. I just want to chat a few minutes about the topic, and then really the way that I best learn about topics is really from your questions. And so we want to talk about exploring student engagement at VCU. We're now into the beginning of the spring semester, at least for all students. Many of our graduate and professional students began their spring semester right after the beginning of the new year. But of course, most of our undergraduates started their coursework this past Tuesday. And it's always interesting spring semester because we start out when it's usually 20 or 30 degrees and snowing, and then by the time we get to the end of the semester, it's usually 80 degrees and sunny for half of the day. So aside from the usual challenges and opportunities that we have during the spring semester, of course, we're dealing with COVID again, and we're nearing a inauspicious mark. In a couple of months, we'll be hitting the 2-year mark from when VCU and many institutions around the country closed because of the COVID pandemic. You've certainly been keeping up with VCU's correspondences, but everything else that's been put out there in various ways about COVID and the Omicron variant. And to make a short story, which again, most of you should know by now, and this is really more just a statement of the situation and certainly not any perspective on the topic, but we had a new governor who was inaugurated this past weekend. And one of the planned executive orders that had been anticipated was that all state employees in regards to institutions of higher education were no longer required to have the vaccine or the boosters or report that to the university, which VCU and many other state institutions in Virginia have been recording. So as of the other day, that requirement was rescinded by the university following up the executive order from the governor. Another executive order that was promulgated pertained to K through 12 students, and because students in higher education were not specifically mentioned, the requirements that were sent out at the end of the fall semester in anticipation for the spring semester were set in place with regards to student requirements for vaccines and boosters. And of course, still have other requirements for everyone being inside of VCU buildings to have masks and things of that nature. So just wanted to acknowledge that this information, again, most of you would have seen either through communication with your students or through the university. But where does that leave us? Well, on an academic side, you probably know as well that similar to fall semester, we wanted to have as robust of an in-person experience as possible. I know that many of you have students who represent a wide variety of majors and experiences at the university. And so as much as possible, whatever the discipline may be, we wanted students to be able to have as much in-person instruction as possible. Also, similar to fall semester, we wanted to have as much online presence as possible as well. This is something that VCU explored prior to the pandemic and will continue to explore, hopefully, as we finally emerge sometime soon outside the pandemic, is to continue to have online offerings in a variety of disciplines and a variety of programs so that students can partake in that for whatever reason. But similarly, we also wanted to have a robust in-person experience with non-academic opportunities. So for instance, tomorrow afternoon, we'll be hosting our semester annual student organization fair. We typically have close to 500 student organizations at VCU that represent a wide variety of interests. And so many of the student organizations and their student representatives will be available tomorrow and also all of next week virtually, so that students, whether they're just starting out the spring semester, because we do have some students who are new to the university, but also students who were here in the fall semester can find out opportunities that they may want to partake in. We also have, as part of VCU athletics, our men's and women's sports, both of those that compete on campus during home events such as basketball, but also those that happen off campus as well. And so we always want to have students go and participate as spectators in those events, especially since through student activity fees and other university fees that they can go into those events for free. You also may know that as happens on an annual basis, the General Assembly of Virginia is now in session. We have many of students who are affiliated with many academic programs who do internships or work down at the state capitol, but we also have a variety of students who, whether they have individual passions or collective passions, will go down and lobby on behalf of those particular passions, or just be in the midst of a very exciting time to find out what sort of new laws or new experiences that the General Assembly might come up with. So that's just very much a broad overview of where we are. Again, the emphasis through the Division of Student Affairs, of which I'm the #2 person, and folks like Linnea and Hillary and many others are part of. We want to continue to provide the best experiences for students, whether that's those who live in our residence halls, those who live off campus. We also, of course, have our rec-well facilities and programs that students can partake in, the library, the dining center, all those things are currently open and available to students. And I could just tell you that it's great, again, despite the weather, to see a multitude of students on and around campus going about their business, because it just makes things feel as close to normal as possible. So I'll end there with those kind of introductory remarks. And given the broad guidelines that Linnea and Hillary shared at the beginning of our chat, I look forward to hearing what your questions may be. You can also, as similar to what's already occurring, you can drop some questions or thoughts in the chat, and hopefully we have time to get to everybody. So I'll start off first with Jim, who dropped in the chat about a question about, will local government possibly override the governor to allow VCU to require vaccine, masks, et cetera? We have an office at the university similar to others in the state, Office of University Counsel, who works through the Commonwealth Attorney's Office to make sure that VCU is in compliance with legislation or other promulgations, whether it's coming out locally, state, or federal-wise. And so whenever institutions of higher education might have questions, usually that's centralized. So Currently, there are no efforts through the university to challenge the type of executive orders that came out. I know you've seen probably in the public venue that from one administration to the other in the General Assembly, that not only they're looking at executive orders, but previous legislation related to the pandemic. But just know that, again, VCU obviously stays on top of those issues. And until things change, whether it's through court action or the legislation through the governor's office or the General Assembly, we stick to what's current. So thank you for that initial question, Jim. And again, you could either, if you feel comfortable, you could drop questions in the chat, or you can just unmute and ask questions. We'll be glad to answer.
I'm going to take this moment too to stop sharing my screen so that if I'm taking up your whole screen, you'll be able to see all the faces of everyone who's participating. We encourage you, if you want to turn your cameras on so that we can see you and engage with you fully, that's great. If you're not comfortable doing that, that's okay too. But as Dr. Rodriguez said, this is a great opportunity for another question, either via chat or by unmuting.
I apologize. I am still at work and the phone rang right when the answer to Jim's question was given. And I actually wrote that question down to ask. And I thank you, Jim, for asking. So masks and boosters, are they required or not for this semester?
So thanks for following up, Pamela. So there's two parts. One is that the university continues to maintain what we have from last semester, that for anybody, whether they're affiliated with the university, faculty, staff, or students, or others who enter any VCU buildings, that they are required to wear masks. So that is still the case. Because of recent executive orders that the requirement for faculty and staff, either current or newly hired, to receive a vaccine or booster is no longer in place, nor is, you may have seen previously that VCU maintained a vaccination dashboard, which is still public facing and included status for all students and then all faculty and staff. But staff and faculty are no longer required to report whether they've been vaccinated or boosted, but the student requirement is still in place. And so the vaccine and the boosters are required. Students have until the beginning of February to report that. Obviously, depending upon the booster and the time period, students may not be eligible for that at this time. When they do become eligible and receive that, then they're still required to report that. So hopefully that clarifies what you missed from the previous answer.
I dropped a message in the chat if you're able to access the chat that we do actually have free KN95 masks on campus. They're located in vending machines that students can utilize their student ID to just swipe and get access to a 2-pack of those. And I've included the link that has all the locations for those vending machines. There's also hand sanitizer and other PPE type equipment available in those machines.
Thanks, Lynette. And I'll follow up with a comment or question that was posted in the chat, and Lynette or Hillary can keep up with me as far as any other websites that need to be posted. But to elaborate on what Sue had put in the chat about her son having 2 classes canceled with a professor because I guess the professor had COVID. There also was a separate dashboard that is still public facing that VCU has had for the past few semesters regarding current cases. Of course, it's all aggregated. It doesn't identify individual cases. The next update will occur this coming Monday. So the last update was provided at the end of the last semester. So again, Lynette or Hillary will drop in the chat the link to the public facing dashboard. And so if you're interested, that has been updated each week during each of the semesters, and folks rightfully have asked, obviously with the Omicron outbreak, what's the status, and it was always planned to wait until on a weekly basis as we did in the fall semester. So look for this coming Monday at some point for the dashboard to be updated if you're interested in that information. I also do this when I speak to other audiences, either in person or via Zoom, if there's kind of a silence because people are, gathering their thoughts or questions. Some other exciting updates and opportunities for students. Every year we have through our Department of Business Services, the opportunities for very robust scholarships. Business Services are the folks who run our dining center, the bookstores. And so every year they very generously turn back over some of the dollars from those operations into student scholarships. The scholarships always have a deadline in mid-February. They've been posted since the end of last semester. If you click on the link now, or if you want to save the link for later, you'll see that many of the scholarships are in the $5,000 to $7,500 range. Those are very robust scholarships, and many of them are by particular categories. But I would strongly encourage you, if your student will be here next academic year, these scholarships are for next academic year. They are available, and I could tell you as one of the people who reviews the scholarships that a lot of times very few students apply for them. Of course, some of them are very specific, but some of them are very broad. Okay, two other questions I want to get to in the chat about raising tuition, and then we'll follow up about the mental health issue. The VCU Board of Visitors is the official group at the university. This is a group, like most state institutions, that have Board of Visitors that are appointed on a staggered basis by whomever the current governor is and whenever slots become available. Of course, the university always puts forward an annual budget to the Board of Visitors, but they sign off on that usually at their last meeting, which happens at VCU the day before spring graduation. So that now they're in the process, along with the administration at the university, to determine what the budget may look like for the academic year 2022 through 2023. Which runs from July 1st of this calendar year through the end of June of 2023. Obviously, due to not only COVID, but the changing cost of education over the past few years, VCU was able to, and very proudly, able to freeze tuition in the last two cycles. In other words, there was no percentage increase in tuition over the past two academic years. There was a slight increase in some of the fees, which will lead to the second question in a moment. But it's at this point where looking at different models about tuition for next year. And we're looking at the same challenges, of course. And we not only look as an administration about costs for next year, but we have students in key leadership positions, including non-voting members who serve as student representatives to the Board of Visitors. I also co-advise our Student Government Association. So when we get into these budget discussions, obviously, to the best of our ability at the university, we want to either have zero impact in tuition or very minimal impact due to university costs. So I would encourage, whether it's your student in particular, or if you have other students who are interested in being part of the discussion about tuition. I always say, there's no purpose in sitting on the sidelines. We'll be glad to kind of talk through what the budget looks like and the reasons for that. So I appreciate the question. I'll get to the mental health right now, then we'll go back to the tuition question. I actually talked to Board of Visitors from across the state who are new to their respective boards at an orientation session about a month ago. And the number one topic, and this is again for other institutions, not just VCU, is about the impact of mental health on students. Even in the best of times, when there were not a pandemic in place, that was a hot topic. And certainly with the pandemic going on over the past couple of years, that's been even more of a concern. And again, even before the pandemic, our counseling center, along with others, and this is also across the nation because I take part in webinars about this topic, the issues of trying to gain access to counselors, and how do you triage what students' needs are at the time. So aside from the normal model, the pandemic has forced universities across the United States to look at different delivery models. And so one of the ways, not only for our own current staff, but for looking to try to address the volume, is to continue to utilize telehealth options for those in particular that feel more comfortable in that type of setting. And so VCU is currently underway with many of our sister institutions in Virginia to look at making that more robust. I myself am not a mental health counselor, but I can tell you now my 18th year at the university, on a daily basis, I see requests, particularly our academic advisors who do a great job in working with our students on their academics, but they're seeing the impact as well. And so we continue to get information out to students about the resources that are available to them. Our deans in the colleges and schools are cognizant about this impact. So I would just say I think we're doing as good a job as possible at the moment. I would continue to say, not only for your particular students, but as you talk to other family members, that I think the most important thing is we want to get students in front of the resources. And I know a lot of times students may be reticent to doing that, but I can see in a good way that students are at least coming forward to say, I'm having some difficulties based on whatever factors, and I'd like to get some assistance, and seeing them being able to move forward and be successful. The question or comment about if most of the classes are online, the price should be reduced. I think, quite frankly, and this is, not only something that VCU is trying to address, but if you look across the country, pre-pandemic, a lot of places were looking at trying to increase the quantity of their online offerings. And I think that what most people don't understand is, and especially at VCU, what we're trying to do is to ensure that the quality of what is offered online, and this can be for any program, is the same as being in person. And really, and talking with my faculty colleagues and with the deans, that the amount of work and preparation and then follow through that my academic colleagues go through in putting together online classes is at least the same as they do in person. And so the quality then drives what we present, and the cost is essentially the same. And so what we've tried to do is, in particular, educate our students about that. The good news is that many of our students, again, particularly during the pandemic, have given us some feedback for those that really thrive in an online environment to say, yes, this is exactly the best way that I learn. It may not be for everyone. And so the quality that they're experiencing and giving us feedback on is, again, similar to what we have from feedback from students who are in person. And of course, during the pandemic, you've seen lots of different other types of modalities. Some are what we call hybrid, some are what we call asynchronous, meaning that students can basically do self-paced learning. So I would say, there's certainly a perception that if things are online, that the cost difference is there, but essentially it's the same, at least, if not in some cases more, to do that. Another question, switching subjects a little bit, about the Johnson Hall mold situation. And again, I really want to empathize with the students who were in Johnson this year and had to be moved, and those that took the option of moving off campus or being relocated to other on-campus localities. Myself and others were part of the larger effort, literally going into the new areas where students were going to be living in as the transition happened right during Thanksgiving, to make sure that those areas were available to the students. So I really feel for the students, and of course the family members who had to assist them doing that. We had already communicated to them, and certainly can provide follow-up that students, if they wanted to seek compensation related to their contracts, could contact Residential Life and Housing for that. And in the meantime, VCU has continued to take Johnson Hall offline. We're looking at doing some mitigation of the situation in there, and hopefully we'll be able to bring it back online in the future. So again, appreciate everybody's patience with that. There was another chat message about receiving a message about virtual classes. So as part of that, I was mentioning, if you're not in Richmond, you may be in other places in Virginia where it's already snowing or has been snowing. The university at the highest level of the administration always monitors the weather when these situations arise. And so a message was put out probably about 40 minutes ago that as of 4 p.m. today, what's going to happen is classes will switch to virtual because we want to make sure people are safe and don't have to worry about coming to or commuting out from the campus as the snow continues and the temperature begins to fall. So that's the message. If you receive that, that's what you're alluding to. A follow-up question about mental health. So just kind of scrolling through there. Certainly, again, referencing the pandemic, that we're now basically into year 2, but it's affected, again, doesn't matter if you're an undergraduate, graduate, or professional student. We really, and this is part of essentially not only this coffee chat series, but my office in particular has provided opportunities for students individually or in groups to find out ways to re-engage. It's really in some ways heartening to hear as I walk around both campuses on a daily basis that the simple things, or things that you would have considered to be the simple things in campus life pre-pandemic, have been more appreciated by students as they realize that every interaction that they have, whether it's in the dining center or in Cabell Library, is important to them, and it really starts building back the sense of student engagement and certainly mental health crises. So I would just say, again, not only for your students, but as you talk to other family members who have current VCU students, is that these opportunities, some of which that I just mentioned, if you were late to the Zoom call, that we've got our student organization fair tomorrow. We've got VCU athletics going on. Our student organizations are up and running. All of our on-campus facilities are available to them. So I would just really continue to emphasize anything and everything, because in my experience, over 40 years in higher education, really only it takes at least just one good contact with students. And we realize that many of those contacts occur in the classroom. And so it doesn't necessarily even have to be anything outside of the classroom, but certainly there's lots of things that are available to them. Going back to the mental health, and then we would see if there's any other chat or questions around there. My staff, Residential Life and Housing, have an on-call system. If the student's living off campus, any student can always contact University Counseling Services, and we'll drop the general number in there, and to make sure that they can get triaged as needed. We'll also follow up. We've got various resources aside from the Dean of Students office that if they've got a particular issue that might be prompting their concern, we can get them directly to a resource, even if it might not be directly University Counseling Services. Because for instance, the drop ad deadline is this coming Monday, and rightfully so. A lot of students are still trying to figure out their schedule for the semester. So that's kind of a peak period where we see a lot of student activity is before the drop ed deadline, because obviously students are here to obtain their education and their degree, and sometimes they feel a little bit unsettled before that occurs. Again, and Lynanne or Hillary can put the Rams Connect webpage in the chat box. The student activity fair and student organization fair is still currently planned to be in person tomorrow at the Student Commons. And then, as we did in previous semesters, there will also be an online option starting again tomorrow through the weekend and into the beginning of next week. Rams Connect also has the availability, I believe, publicly to search a particular organization that they can link up with. Because I go to the fair and I do it also virtually, I know that particularly at the beginning of the semester that students and their student organizations are eager to look for other students who might be interested. Lynanne can also put in the chat box, as I mentioned before, I'm one of the advisors for this, excuse me, Student Government Association, and they're always looking for students to get involved with as well. And if for some reason your student can't find anything, they can always email me and we can find something that they can be linked up with. Other thoughts or questions that you may have? And Lynanne, please jump in if I'm missing anything big in the schedule or what's going on campus as well.
You're doing a great job. I've got a plug for the Leaders Unleashed conference at the very end, but yep, you're doing awesome.
Well, why don't you talk about that now? Give me a chance to recenter. Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that?
Sure, absolutely. Let me share my screen again. Let's see. Here we go. This is just my little photo view of it, but that's okay. That'll show it nice and big. So the Leaders Unleashed conference is getting ready to happen here, just not this coming weekend, but the following Saturday. And I want to just explain a little bit about what it is, because I think many of our students maybe even have some misconceptions about Leaders Unleashed. It is not a conference on campus just for students who are in leadership positions. It is a conference for all of our students who are interested in enhancing their leadership skills and growing as leaders. And so they don't have to be a president or an officer or a club member, or really they don't have to be even involved. In fact, I would say that I hope that the students who pursue Leaders Unleashed are maybe students who aren't involved yet on campus and are looking for opportunities to do so. And so, Wendella, to speak to your question earlier about what are some of the things we're doing to re-engage, this is an example of a program that hopefully can re-engage some of our students. Yeah, I love it. Love the 2 thumbs up. So the conference is happening next Saturday, January 29th from 10 to 2. It is on campus. And I think it's just going to be a really great opportunity for students. If you want to be able to quickly send your student information about it, you can certainly scan the QR code that you see on your screen using your smart device, and then just send them the link that goes right along with that. I'll also ask Hillary if you wouldn't mind dropping a link for information about Leaders Unleashed in the chat. That would be great as well. But I really hope we have a lot of student involvement. Right now, we have just over 50 students registered. So it is looking like it's going to be a pretty intimate experience, but I think that can also be really beneficial as well. Those smaller experiences, students are able to develop connections and get to know other Rams a little bit more during that process. So definitely encourage your students to participate.
Well, thanks, Lynanne. And we'll be sending out shortly to all students from Dr. Klink, our Senior Vice Provost, his spring semester message, which talks about many of the engagement opportunities, including, I'll drop in the chat, I mentioned previously VCU Board of Visitors. We have 2 students who are again, non-voting representatives that we select every year, and we're just starting that process. So if your student or anybody else might be interested in applying for that, it's a very interesting position. And although I think we're past many of the other student leadership applications for next year, such as orientation leaders and resident assistants, again, if your student is going to be here for, let's say, another 2 or 3 years, these are other opportunities that really combine a lot of things that we were just talking about, not only leadership learning potential, but also being involved in significant student engagement on campus. So we always try to put all this information in front of students in various formats because we know that students are busy, but if we get the word out in different ways, then usually it's something that students find out about if they're interested. So there's a question from Jim about what is the impact about dropping a class after Monday's deadline? Does it show up as a drop? And no, these are all good questions. And again, Hillary or Linnea can drop in the chat the academic calendar, as well as the link for some students for various reasons. Let's say they drop a class, then it just doesn't show up. If they do it by that deadline, it doesn't show up on their transcript or anything else like that. What will happen after Monday is that there's a schedule about 4 weeks into the semester where if a student were to essentially withdraw from one or more classes, then it would show up as a W, meaning withdrawal from their transcript. There's no GPA impact on there, but the declining 4-week balance gives you the opportunity to retain part of your tuition and fees. And essentially, after the drop add deadline, that tuition and fee refund drops 20% each week. And then of course, the withdrawal deadline is well into the semester, about usually 10 weeks into the fall or spring semester. And so what happens is after the 4th week, there's no refund of tuition and fees. It shows up as a W on the transcript. And then after that time period, then it gets a little bit more complicated for academic purposes. So we always want to make sure that students through their academic advisors are well aware of these different deadlines. And certainly you as family members want to know as well, not only for academic progress status, but certainly for tuition and fee purposes. So good question. So I think we have time for some more questions or chat, and if not, we can wrap up before then. But I just want to give others an opportunity and see if you had any other questions or thoughts that you'd like to share.
You're also welcome to use this time to ask questions of one another if you're looking for advice from another parent or family member. Or even want to share a celebration or something great that's happening with your students so far at the beginning of the semester. We'd just love to hear from you.
Okay, I'll go. I just wanted to say, Leanne, I told you this, you probably don't remember me. You see lots of faces. I told you this over the summer that I really appreciate you putting these types of events together. I am that mother. I work for the school system here in Chesapeake, Virginia, and I love information. It helps to relieve my worry or my anxiety, even though this is my 4th child and my youngest. She's my only girl also, but she's kind of quiet, reserved. She's doing fantastic. Her grades were beautiful this past semester. She loves it there. And I'm happy that she's happy. So you've given me great comfort in having these types of events. So I just wanted to share that. You said share, so I just thought I would let you know that I'm feeling very comfortable with VCU, and I've not gone with a question unanswered, and I do appreciate that.
Thank you. That's such helpful feedback, and that makes me feel good. So thank you.
Yes, thank you
I'm so
very
glad
much
to
for that
hear he's
feedback.
doing so well.
Yes. Going back to the COVID situation about isolation and things of that nature. And again, I asked Linnea or Hillary to drop in the chat the updated information on that. And certainly the university follows Virginia Department of Health and current CDC guidelines. So you probably saw a few weeks ago that the quarantine isolation period was cut in half. And similarly, through the different ways that, not only housing students on campus, but we know that there's a significant number of students that live off campus. So if you want to click on that for, perusal to answer that particular question, or now, or if you want to take a look at it later, I think we've done a pretty good job of, providing information about isolation and quarantine. I would say too that information continues to be passed along, particularly to students, if they want to get, for some reason, again, we've got new students who may not have been vaccinated, or those that will receive boosters, to give information to them. You may have also seen that through different ways that information is going out about how people can get some quick home tests for COVID purposes if they feel like they want to do that as well. So I appreciate the questions, and you can go to that particular website and find out specific information about quarantine and isolation. So I appreciate the question. All right, well, I know we've almost reached the end of our time together, but I really, again, want to thank all of you, and hopefully it's a good kickoff to the spring semester that this type of session has proven useful for you. I know that, again, your time is very much appreciated, and you may not be able to attend some of the subsequent ones. We hope that you do, and hopefully also that you share the news, that if you found this to be a very helpful session, that you encourage others to come as well. And Linnea, do you want to give any other plugs for any future programs that are coming up this semester?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. So I mentioned the Leaders Unleashed. So there's the screen one more time in case you didn't get a shot of it beforehand and want to share that with your student. Again, the registration is still open, although I do believe it's closing in a few days. And so I would encourage them to register soon if they haven't already. I also wanted to share with you all the schedule for the future coffee breaks. And so again, you're encouraged, if you want to take a screenshot or take a photo of this, we'll also be sending this out over the family listserv. And so you can access it there as well. Our next chat is going to be on February 3rd at same time, 3 p.m. We're kind of varying the times for these to accommodate different time zones. And so some will be at 3 p.m. and some will be at 10 a.m. But our next chat on February 3rd is an open chat, which really means we're going to do very little talking on our end. And it's really just an opportunity for you all to connect, to ask questions of each other, to get advice from one another, or even just come and vent and do whatever it is you would normally do over a cup of coffee with a friend. And so that space will be available for you on February 3rd, and we'll send out the Zoom link for that as well. And we also wanted to follow up by just giving you our contact information here in Family Programs. If you need anything at all, we're here to help. So you've got our email address there, the ramfamilies@vcu.edu, or you can call us. If you don't have this phone number stored in your phone, do it now. It's the Parent and Family Helpline. We are here Monday through Friday. We take calls on that line from 9 to 5 and return them quickly if we're not available. And so it's just a really great resource, I think, for families to get quick answers to their questions or get referred to the right resource. So we're happy to help you if we can there. And that's it. We've enjoyed spending a little bit of time with you, and I hope that we get a chance to see you again on February 3rd. If you have follow-up questions, send us an email or give us a call. We'll see you soon. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Be well. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.